This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, more news coming out about Vince McMahon. Who's going to headline WrestleMania 39? Who wants to go and wrestle in AEW? As well as more info, possibly, on what's going on with MJF, Ric Flair, all these things. Also, I've got a bit of a rumor for you. We're going to save that for the very, very end. Wasn't able to back this up with any place else. I've seen it one spot, so I usually don't like to come to the table with these things, but I'm going to give it to you, and we'll maybe have a discussion at the very, very end of the show, so you will want to stick around for that. But of course, we're going to get into all the news that took place with AEW and everything that unfolded with WWE, and doing it with me, as always, is the one, the only, the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Please, Vince McMahon, put down the checkbook. Oh my God, more monies that potentially Vince McMahon paid out. So listen, it's a situation in which the investigation is ongoing. Not good news, but in the end, the first 2 to 3 weeks of Paul handling business, I've been very, very impressed. I mean, it just has the feel of a concerted effort to switch from sports entertainment to professional wrestling. And this is something that you and I and Kenny and all the people that we follow on Twitter and support that talk wrestling have found to be quite excellent. It makes for great viewing. It makes for surprises, people coming back, great storylines that are potentially emerging, and those that maybe we had felt did not get a fair shake are now doing that on television, which makes for a product that, even if you don't watch it live, if you catch it later, it's absolutely worth it. This week of wrestling was pretty awesome in my mind compared to the last couple of weeks as well.
A really good week of wrestling, and WWE, I think, has done a really great job of crushing things and hitting it out of the park. And this is what I took away from Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw has this feel, this era, this essence, if you will, of what we used to get with the Attitude Era. Now, I'm not saying it is the Attitude Era, but what I'm saying is there is a lot of similarities to what we used to get with the Attitude Era. And it was the way I loved wrestling shows being booked. And I was wondering if you noticed this as well. During the Attitude Era, the way a show would open up is you'd have one story weaved throughout the entire show. And it usually culminated somewhere around the main event. But what would happen is there would be something so shocking, so awe-inspiring that it forced you to come back the following week. It was almost like when you had a book. You would start at the very, very front of it, and then you would get to the end of it, and it would be like to be continued, and you had to go get that next book. That was what the Attitude Era that's what the Attitude used to give us. Something changed, and I don't know if it was around the PG era. I don't know exactly when it changed, but what ended up happening was the shows ended up opening and closing very similarly. You basically open the show the same way you closed the show, and then you would tune in the following week to basically get recapped, and then you would open the show and close the show, and then you would just hit repeat. And it didn't really ever give you a reason to come back. It never really gave you a reason to be like, oh, I got to tune in next week and I got to see what's going on. Under Paul Levesque, under Triple H, what we are currently getting is very similar to what I feel the Attitude Era gave us, where you would open the book, you would start the show, and then you would have something going on, and then at the very, very end of the show, or near the end of the show, you would be informed as to what that was getting weaved throughout the show, and then it would force you to have to come back the following week because they would have to address it. And this week, I think, was a prime example on Monday Night Raw, where you had a car crash, you had security guards running, you had a car getting towed, and you notice these things, but you're just kind of like, well, what the hell is going on there? And then all of a sudden, at the very, very end of the show, you see Dexter Lumis in the crowd as security's exiting him out. And to me, it really harkened back to those days when we were younger and we would watch wrestling, and we'd be like, oh man, I got to tune in next week. And we would go and talk with all of our friends about what took place on Monday Night Raw because it left you wanting more. And I feel like that's what we're getting. I was wondering if you noticed anything similar to what I've noticed.
Yeah, it's great because what made the Attitude Era great was it felt like appointment viewing. It felt like if you missed a show, you missed something huge. And Dexter Lumis returning, you're having new characters come back, new storylines emerging. You're having good matches, longer matches that I think are resonating with the fan base. And the Attitude Era is one of the great eras. And the great part is we have a direct tie to that Attitude Era in Triple H running everything. And I think, too, what you're starting to see is potentially now the influence of those that he's talking to in the back, those that he trusts in regards to who should we develop, what should we expect. And I think, too, that the one thing that over the last 2 years that you kind of noticed over time was it just kind of felt like Vince and the creative team just did whatever and said, we're WWE, so we just do whatever we want. Now, Triple H is not going to cater to the fans 24/7, but you're starting to kind of get some things sprinkled out there that maybe are going to be things that fans want. And mainly just getting rid of the 24/7 title, not making the show all about all these characters running around the ring looking for the 24/7 title. Because in essence, I just never understood why those performers would want to. I know you're on TV, but I don't understand why they'd ever want to do that. Because in essence, it was the signal that you're a jabroni. It's like, oh, I look down. It would be deflating for me. I'd show up to work. I'm training. I'm on the road grinding. I'm driving, and I show up, and my thing is to run around the ring and take 5 pins and be the 24/7 champion for 48 seconds. That's not what the show needs to be about. And I just think that there can be entertainment. There can be fun segments. There can be fun things with The Miz and stuff like that. But I'll just say this. Just the very notion that they made Kevin Owens a badass this week and they're moving him probably up the card pretty fast back to where he needs to be, that just tells you that people are talking like, why the fuck are we making Kevin Owens an entertainer? He's a bad man. You want to end the feud with Elias and the new guy? Here's how we end it. Nice power bomb into the ropes, into the ring, and let's make it so that Kevin Owens can be reestablished as a bad motherfucker. And I think that's what we're looking for, and that's what was reminiscent of the Attitude Era.
So you brought up the 24/7 title, and I think that's great to kind of highlight that and pinpoint that, because with the 24/7 title, these are things that Vince loved. Vince loved comedy and wrestling, and it was a way to get everybody involved, right? Whether you realized it or not, he got people involved, and that was his easy. I don't have to think about it. What do we have? Pick random mid-carder. What are they doing right now? They're not doing anything cool. Let's throw them in here and we'll have them run around for the belt. It was a way to get them involved. If you go back to when we were younger, go back to the Attitude Era. I'm going to throw a tag team out there, and I know you're not going to be able to tell me really any storyline that they had, but you'll know the name. I'm struggling to come up with names for the 24/7 title who were involved in it besides Dana Brooke, but I'm going to throw a tag team out there, and you're going to be like, yeah, they had storylines. Back when we were younger, everybody had storylines. Everybody on TV had a meaningful story. Whether it was good or not, or whether it was at top of the card or not, that could be debated, but everybody had a storyline. Do you remember Kai and Tai?
Kai and Tai. Yeah, absolutely.
See, exactly. Kai and Tai had storylines. Kai and Tai had you invested up to where almost 15, 20 years later, you remember Kai and Tai. Honestly, we just watched a 24/7, whatever you want to call it. We watched it a couple months ago. I can't remember anybody who's in it, but I can remember Kai and Tai, and that tells you how meaningful what is going on really is. What we used to get, where everybody had storylines, meant something. 24/7 title doesn't mean anything. Nobody pays attention to that. You know what I'm saying? Nobody cares about that. So I think you make a great point, and you really help lay it out. And I think you highlighting the 24/7 title, I think does a great job to kind of highlight what WWE had become. And now this is where we're going, and I think it's great. And I think a really good example of where we're going, and I think you learned a lot about what Triple H was going to do, and I think you learned a lot about what was going to happen and how things are going to be booked going forward, was with the Bobby Lashley Tommaso Ciampa match. in my head going into that match, I was like, Bobby Lashley should retain his title. Bobby Lashley is incredibly over right now. Bobby Lashley looks like an absolute badass. In this match, I was like, if Tommaso Ciampa wins, is basically what Paul is going to do is he's going to bring everybody from NXT who got let go or wasn't doing anything, and he's going to put them in positions of power. Instead, he didn't do that. He did what was best for business. And what was best for business was Bobby Lashley retaining his belt and Tommaso Ciampa getting the F over in a match. Tommaso Ciampa looked like a complete badass and a realistic threat for everything in this match against Bobby Lashley. I believe it was the right call for Bobby Lashley to retain his title over Tommaso Ciampa. Do you think it was the right call for Bobby Lashley to walk out as the United States champion again?
Yes, absolutely. I think that this is a character now that also can be invigorated by new booking. And look, the man's a badass, and you have to start. That was the one thing we talked about over the past few weeks. You have to make your stars credible, and then you have to keep them credible. It's not one thing to say, okay, you get over. And I hearken it to like Drew McIntyre. There was a period of time there now when maybe he was going to start to slip into that sports entertainer nonsense with the sword and the gimmick and stuff like that. But no, that dude is a monster. The dude is a physically fit freak of nature. So the likes of Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, having the opportunity to win, also to have Ciampa in the match adds credibility. And like you said, this was something that we felt in the past. What would have happened if it was WWE in the past. Bobby Lashley takes on Ciampa, and Ciampa doesn't get any moves over. And it's a 4-minute match, and it's like Bobby Lashley gets in there and destroys them, and you just completely ruin the credibility. And I think sometimes it just gets overlooked because of the fast-paced nature of the wrestling business. But it caused serious damage to a lot of the brands of these wrestlers. And that's all they care about is, hey, put me on the card. But when you put me on the card, don't devalue my brand. Keep it so that, wins and losses, now they really don't matter in the realm of the real world, but they matter in regards to marketability. That matters that, hey, if I'm Tommaso Ciampa and I'm booked for a 3-minute match and I get one move in there and then I'm taking a leg drop, I'm taking body slams and everything, then in essence, you're telling the audience this is a character that should not be taken seriously. And so you can do that in a lot of different ways in wrestling matches. And Tommaso Ciampa, like you said, comes out looking like the person that was in NXT and a character that you want to see get his, maybe with the United States title or an opportunity at the tag title when the opportunity comes and he gets more of a push.
Yeah, and this is something else that I realized this week too. We just got done talking about the U.S. Championship and how it was a good, credible match. On SmackDown, we got to see the Intercontinental Championship defended. So you're seeing those secondary titles being put into hands and being cared for and being elevated, and you're getting to see this done in such a way that it pays respect, pays homage to those belts and to the lineage of those belts, and you're actually getting to see them on TV in meaningful matches. It's not like they're throwaway matches. Whereas and look, Miz says it all the time, but Miz did help reestablish and re-elevate the Intercontinental Championship. Forever and a day, the Intercontinental Championship was one of your and my favorite belts. It was a belt worn by Shawn Michaels. It was worn by Bret Hart. It was a belt that was worn by Razor Ramon. It was a belt that helped get you into the spotlight and then helped get you up the card to be a champion. And it was completely devalued. It was made comical. It was made funny. It wasn't to be taken serious. They put it on Miz, and Miz got it over. Miz made it important again. And then it has had this weird time where it has been important, has been important, been important, has been important. It's gone back to Miz, and Miz has helped reestablish this importance. It's been really weird the way it's been kind of tossed around. It has been utilized as a prop. And I think the one thing that pisses both you and I off is when belts are utilized as props. The belts are there for a reason. Like, you're a champion for a reason. So it has to have meaning. But for a long time, the belts were utilized as props. And I think what we're seeing now, especially with this past week's Monday Night Raw and this past week's SmackDown, you're seeing the belts are actually being put in credible hands, and they're being lifted up and elevated to a point where everything is now believable, right? Like there's a reason why Gunther's your Intercontinental Champion. There's a reason why Bobby Lashley's your United States Champion. You can believe in these guys being champions and doing the right thing. So I think that is really, really awesome. And it's weird because we've gone for so long for shitting on WWE and everything with WWE that it's weird coming back and all we're doing is heaping praise on it. Like we haven't really said anything bad. It's kind of a little bit of a weird paradox that we're in right now. Now, something big did happen on Friday Night SmackDown. I want to get your take on it. We have Hit Row back in WWE, but it's not the Hit Row that we had before. This one is minus Swerve Strickland, aka Swerve Scott. Obviously, he's in AEW, so we basically have the three other members of Hit Row back in WWE. Do you think this is better for that trio, or will it be a little bit lacking? Because I'll be honest with you, I think Swerve Strickland was not just the mouthpiece, but I also think he was the guy who could carry it in the ring for that group. So I have some concerns as to how this will impact that trio. But do you think it's best for them not to have him and basically go as a three-person group?
And here's what Vince used to always say: all I can do is give you the opportunity. And I think when you look at fairness, I think what Paul's trying to do is to say, look, I want to give the people that maybe were not given a fair shake on the main card to actually, let's go back and revisit what we did. Because remember, he put time into it. Put, imagine you and I put a podcast, you put this rundown together, and then for the last 6 years, you've been typing up all these things, and then just over the next 2 weeks, I go, you know what, Adam? Great, keep doing that, but we're just going to talk about something completely different. Let's just talk about New Japan this week. And you're like, wait a minute, what the heck? I just watched all this wrestling. I just talked about Vince, the Attitude Era, what's been going on. Why would we just then do something else? You would just be like, man, all that effort didn't come to fruition. We never got to talk about the topics that we wanted to get to or do the shows that we had intended to do. So I think, naturally speaking, you're just looking normally. Triple H wants to see what would have came out of his ideas. And I think that while you're right, the star power has diminished. They're given an opportunity, and that's all you can ask for. Go sink or swim. And I want to highlight this point again. WWE was hurting the talent. And I think in this new era, the one thing that I'm looking forward to is I believe the talent will be given the fairest shake to get over. Work your matches, learn your craft, get over on the mic, have good matches, have good feuds. And in the end, if they don't work out, it will be the fault of the talent, not the fault of Karrion Kross, who's wearing the dumbest mask ever, at the highest level of debauchery, where you're like, man, I can't get over if the company's putting a 95-pound anchor on my leg and making me a laughing stock. Like, I don't want to be a caricature. I'll do it for the check, but in the end, you've ruined my love for the business. So I think Triple H will give all these characters, Hit Row, the ladies that have returned, Karrion Kross, everybody gets their fair shake, and let's see what happens. We can finally have a real evaluation. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that's where we're going to end up getting. And look, this is my concern for the trio is, again, I think Swerve Scott, a.k.a. Swerve Strickland, he was the power in that group. He was the guy who was established in NXT. That group was built around him. Now you take him out. I think the benefit for this group is it now allows all of them, like you said, it gives them the opportunity. This now allows all of you to go out there and shine. This now allows all of you guys to go out there and get yourself over. You no longer have this guy who is going to outshine you. You guys can now go get yourselves over. And I think that's probably the most interesting part of it. And it goes right back to what you said, right? They're all being given a shot, and they're all we're going to see if they can actually do it without him. So it'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to see. I wouldn't be surprised if there might be some repackaging that comes along the way, but this was a nice reintroduction, and you're right. This is a way for Triple H to kind of fix some of the wrongs, right? Right some of the things that were taken from him and were out of his control. Try to make it right. So it'll be fun to see. It'll be interesting to see. Now, with AEW Dynamite this week, to me it really felt like Dynamite felt like Rampage were both building blocks to All Out. All Out is coming up in a couple of weeks. The real big news was CM Punk is back. CM Punk came back, and I do want to talk about that at a little bit of a lengthy stretch here. But for Dynamite this week, did it really feel like this was kind of a WWE show, like an old WWE show, like a Vince McMahon ran WWE show? It felt like there was a lot of promos. Felt like it was a little bit of wrestling, and it felt like everything was setting the stage for what was coming in a couple of weeks. It really didn't feel like there was anything monumental until maybe the very, very end of the show. What was your take on Dynamite this week?
I was just excited to see Chris Jericho take on John Moxley. I loved his
Lionheart gimmick. It was great.
It was a good match, and it was something intended to obviously continue, getting both over in their work in AEW. You're absolutely right. I believe that both came away looking great. And with AEW, I think that with the WWE changes, now they're focusing in on putting in the talent that they have on the roster and elevating them continuously. I'm loving what the Blackpool Combat Club is doing. You love what they're doing at the top. I just think that for AEW, you just kind of got to put a little bit more infusion into the mid-card, kind of give a little bit more emphasis to the likes of a Jack Hager, Sammy Guevara. They're getting overshadowed by Chris Jericho on the regular, and they need to kind of keep up their momentum. And that's kind of where it needs to be. It's kind of like I'm sensing the separation from the top and the middle. It's kind of ever growing. And maybe you need to kind of highlight some more of the mid-card on Rampage. But I'm loving to see the development of Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, and the likes, and All Out shaping out to be a very good card. Again, I think that the best part of his return is CM Punk looked healthy, he looked good, and it kind of had the vibe of, okay, it's about that time that he was about to make his return. So it was anticipated, and it was nice to see.
It does really feel like AEW is starting to get healthy at the exact right time, which is nice, because CM Punk makes his return. Speculation is now that Punk and Moxley will be at All Out, and they're going to unify the AEW Championship. You've got Daniel Bryan. It looks like he's coming back. You've got somebody who we're going to talk about here very, very shortly, possibly making a return next week, and I want to get your take on that. But I do want to circle back to CM Punk and Jon Moxley, because I feel like Jon Moxley has really carried AEW for a long stretch that he has been in AEW. I think he was the right guy to be we'll call it the interim champion. I think he was the right guy for it, because some of his matches have been absolutely incredible. Do I think he bleeds too much? Yes. I think the guy bleeds way too much, and it is kind of taken away from that aspect of his matches. But you have this match building for All Out. It seems like Jon Moxley may be going into this as the heel. You've got CM Punk going into it, obviously, as the babyface. It's going to be taking place in Chicago, so the fan base is going to be ravenous for CM Punk. Who do you think should be the champion? Should Punk unify those titles with his first title defense? Because remember, he broke his foot right after he ended up winning the belt. Or do you think the belt should stay on Jon Moxley and he can help to continue to elevate it? Because this is a guy who I think had a fantastic match with Chris Jericho, and I loved the Lionheart gimmick. That was one of my favorite versions of Chris Jericho. So I want to know, who do you think should come away the champion? Like, if you had the pencil, how would you book this? And this could be totally different than what you think is going to actually happen when we go to do our predictions in a couple of weeks. But what would you do right now? Would you leave the belt on Moxley, or would you leave the belt on Punk, and why?
I'd leave the belt on CM Punk. That's the champion. He never lost it. So I think it was a perfect opportunity to have an interim champion. You got to get Moxley over with some violence. But absolutely, CM Punk never lost it. He needs to have a run, a good year. Maybe he could even be like trying to go into Tony's office and being like, Roman Reigns had a run of 700 days. I want a reign of 1,400 days. But no, and all kidding aside, CM Punk can make that belt, and he can get so many people over by having great matches and storylines. Now, where would the title change take place? Maybe in January, maybe in February, if it's not going to be a long-term run. But you got to see what CM Punk can do. And unfortunately, you could have the debate that what's best for business-wise, just professional wrestling, would be to keep it on Moxley, because he's the young bull that can wrestle every week and wrestle in a violent kind of way that's believable. But what's best for the bottom line, the coffers, is to have a nice tour of the country with CM Punk wearing the gold.
See, I think Jon Moxley has done such a great job elevating that belt, and the crowd is so into him everywhere he goes. I would leave the belt on Moxley. I think he is a better champion than Punk. At this point, Punk advanced in age. I don't know if he can have as many matches as Jon Moxley can have and really show off that title. I think if you put the belt on CM Punk, you got to worry about a bit of an injury. You also will have to dial back some of those wrestling events because I just don't think he can physically stand up to the punishment like Jon Moxley can. The one thing I will say is I don't need Jon Moxley to bleed every time he has a wrestling match. I don't need that. But I would definitely leave the belt on Jon Moxley. I'll be honest with you too. I'm a little bit jaded. I feel like Tony Khan is one of the biggest marks in wrestling. I really do feel like that. I do believe that. Like he is a fan at heart, which is great. And I think we all love that he's a fan, but sometimes his fandom really interferes with the business aspect of wrestling and it drives me insane. And I think he has this love bubble, this gush for CM Punk. And there's a reason why CM Punk got to keep his belt. I don't think if it was anybody else, I don't think anybody else would have got to keep their belt. I don't think if it was Jericho and he broke his foot, he'd get to keep his belt. I don't think if it was Moxley, he'd get to keep his belt. I don't think if it was Kenny Omega, he'd get to keep his belt. Damn it, Kenny Omega wrestled with 1,001 injuries, torn labrum, busted ribs, beat up arm, beat up eye, multiple concussions, vertigo. Like he wrestled through all of it, and he didn't put his belt down because the business has to go on. I think CM Punk is the only guy who gets that special treatment, and that annoys me. That bothers me. There's no reason CM Punk should get that special treatment. Now, I did mention Kenny Omega. Do you expect the one, the only, the Kenny Omega to show up next week on Dynamite for the Trios Challenge with the Young Bucks? Now, if you would have brought this up to me last week, I'd have said there's not a chance in hell. My man is still recovering. There are zero reports that he's even able to come back. If anybody's coming back first, it'll be CM Punk. Well, CM Punk came back last week, or this week, I should say. So does Kenny Omega come back for this Trios Challenge? Because we thought that Hangman Page might have joined the Young Bucks for that, for the Trios Challenge. He said no, he's going to support the Dark Order. Does Kenny Omega come in, and is he that third person for the Young Bucks? Is he the mystery partner?
Yes, absolutely. That would be fantastic, man. I'm ready for the pop. Give us what we want. I think it's an opportunity that we all need to see and have the opportunity to get out there and handle business. I can't wait to see it, man. I think that I know eventually we're going to have this elaborate discussion. I know AEW likes the belts, and pretty soon they're going to have a, hey, sign your contract belt, where everybody that signs a contract just basically gets a belt and wears it out. And, you know what I mean? You know,
on the front of it, it'll have the AEW emblem, and then underneath it, it'll say, "Is all elite." Is all elite,
exactly. So it'll just be like all 5-minute intros, and the new all elite contract champion. You know, this is the person. You know, a whole division. This person signed for the most signing bonus. This person signed for the shortest deal. This belt is representing of the contract that has the most guarantees. This one has the most backside money. This one has the most merchandise. So I think that's going to be great when, you know, you and I debut and we're going to be the AEW merchandise champs because we sell, you know, we move the most merch, baby, DocNJock. So give us a belt. But we'll have that talk because it's getting up there in regards to titles here at AEW. But the Trios one has a lot of respect. And if Kenny Omega's in it, it's going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting. I think the belts will look nice, but again, I don't necessarily think we needed another set of tag titles. It's weird because New Japan has 1,001 belts, but New Japan can get it over. Like with New Japan, I feel like there's history and lineage. Maybe it's just the fact that it's Japanese wrestling that makes it feel more important. I don't know. I just feel like AEW, being a brand new startup company, you don't need all these belts. There are times where your TNT and your TBS championships don't feel important at all. So why are we going to have another set of tag team belts and try to make those feel important? So it just doesn't make sense. But I do think Kenny Omega is that mysterious partner. I think it would have been interesting if it would have been Hangman with the Young Bucks. I think you could have had Kenny Omega come back and he could have been a little bit salty and There could have been some things that there could have been some story building off of what we had the previous, 2 years. We could have picked right back up with that, and we could have continued to build on that, and I think that would have been really interesting. But I do think Kenny Omega comes back, and I do think that is the direction we head in there. Now, we've been a little bit more critical of AEW on this episode, and I think that's good. I think that's what makes our show our show. I think we are very fair in our assessments of what we see with WWE. I think we're very fair in our assessments of what we see with AEW, and we call a spade a spade. If we like it, we like it. If we don't like it, we don't like it. This is something I don't like, and I wanted to get your view on it, your opinion on it, because I feel like AEW is going out of its way to sign a lot of talent from WWE. And it's not necessarily good. It's not necessarily a good thing. But you get a guy like Jon Moxley, that's great. You get a guy like Christian, yeah, that's great. You get some big name stars, guys who really helped carry it. That is great. You get a guy like Miro. Please use him. Please use him, because there's something else I'm going to add to the news and notes that I totally forgot to add to the news. Or maybe I did add it. I'm not sure. But I've got so many news and notes, so you stick around for all of that. But you get these guys from WWE. These guys are ultra talented. Use them. That's great. But when you go out and you sign unproven talent, you sign guys that NXT let go, I have a bit of an issue with that. And then you're putting them into primetime television. A prime example of this is a guy like Parker Brodeur. Parker Brodeur. You got to see him on Rampage. This was a guy who was cut from NXT. You had other guys who are now part of QT Marshall's group that were cut from NXT. And AEW just brings them in and then puts them in primetime spots. Well, this is part of what MJF was bitching about. This is part of what really upset MJF. MJF is a guy who can win you a ratings share on any Wednesday or any Friday night, and he's got to share his time. He's got to share monies with these guys who you're just bringing in off the street that really nobody has any idea who they are. These are just geeks off the street. Whereas a guy like MJF gets paid what he gets paid. Look, he signed the contract. The contract is what the contract is. You can renegotiate your contract when your contract is up. That is fine. That is how that works. But I get why he is pissed and why he gets upset when you're bringing in new guys and they're making either dollar for dollar what he makes, or they're making 5 times as much as he makes. And he's the guy who's basically carrying this company on his back. That would piss me off as well. I think AEW is signing way too much unproven talent from WWE, and I think it's a bit of an issue. I was wondering if you noticed that or if you have a problem with that. You might not have a problem with it. You might say, hey, whatever, it's cool. I'm just kind of curious if you noticed it or if you have an issue with it.
I noticed it for sure, but I don't have an issue with it because, again, and you and I have talked about it, I think the first couple years was the altruistic side of Tony Khan, where it's like, yeah, we're an indie company. We're going to change the landscape of the world. And maybe you can surmise that why Cody Rhodes became a little disenfranchised was he went into it idealistic. Yeah, we're going to be alternative. We're going to be story-driven forever. We're going to build up all these characters and tell all these wonderful stories across the show. And then you start getting into TV contracts and ratings per second and ratings per segment and trying to renew television deals and trying to maximize television deals. And I think you start to see that, hey, you need some names. Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, Rusev, the likes of those that have come over from WWE, Chris Jericho, Jack Hager, and you recognize that while the altruistic nature of what's going on may not be the same, the premise is the same, which is we have an opportunity at AEW to take a star maybe that was underutilized and to shine our light onto him and see if we can actually change the course of that character's career. And I think that the course of action can be looked at by Claudio Castagnoli. Let's see if he gets over, and let's see if this can work. But you're absolutely right. I think AEW might be facing identity crisis among the hardcore supporters.
Yeah, it's just, to me, I just don't understand. Like, I have no investment in what I've seen on Rampage on Friday night. Parker Brodeur, whatever his name is. See, I can't even pronounce his name right. I don't care. I'm not interested. There's 1,001 guys in the back of that locker room that you could have brought out and put in that spot. Instead, you didn't. You did this. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where we go. I just think sometimes some of these guys need, if you want to have them and you want to bring them along slowly, fine. That's what you have Dark for. Put them on Dark. Use Dark. That's why you have Dark, is to really help get these guys some time, get these guys some reps in. But you don't need to do it on one of your big two shows. You don't have to do that, especially in prime spots. Don't need that. What was your show of the week? What show, if there was one show that somebody only has a couple hours to spend some time and invest in, what show should they watch this week?
Oh, man, it's tough. It's a close between Raw and Dynamite. Dynamite had that world title match, but by and large, I think the character development, the oh my gosh situations that are happening on Raw makes it so that now it's almost can't miss. So for me, it was Raw.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Raw as well. Raw gets my nod. I think the way Raw was orchestrated, and again, you have to pay attention. You go back and you watch these subtle little things, you start putting the puzzle together, and it gives you an aha moment at the very, very end, and it's great. It's spectacular, and that to me was the highlight. I thought it was fantastic. So I'm going to give Raw the nod as well. It's weird because WWE the last couple weeks, man, has started stealing our points for show of the week. Dynamite has a huge lead, but you've got WWE slowly chipping away at it. So really, really interesting. Really, really good.
All right, cuz it's that time of the show. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes.
So a whole lot to get to here. PW Insider posted a report noting that John Laurinaitis has officially been terminated by the company on Monday. The report notes that the termination happened within the last week or so, and it was for obvious reasons that it was kept very quiet beyond a very small circle. It wasn't noted exactly when the departure took place, but every source to a person made it clear Laurinaitis was gone from the company. Now, WrestleMania 39. Sounds like we will be getting The Rock at WrestleMania 39. Per Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, the current plan is indeed for The Rock and Roman Reigns to headline the April 2023 event. Per Meltzer, it is the plan. It's 100% the plan for this year. But the idea is it's the plan if he can do it. We're still months away, months and months and months away. So many opportunities and things that may come up that are far more important than WrestleMania. We'll have to wait and see if the build continues or if something changes. Now, what I will tell you is for movie stars who wrestle, this all changed after The Rock wrestled John Cena at WrestleMania a few years ago. The Rock ended up tearing a pec, and it really slowed the production of a movie that he was in. So what you'll notice is wrestlers who are movie stars like John Cena, like The Rock, they won't actually wrestle. They'll show up, but they won't actually wrestle in a match if they're in the middle of producing or filming a movie. WWE is to have some association with the production of a new wrestling docuseries, a new Vice series called Tales from the Territories from the producers of Dark Side of the Ring. We have a bit of an update as to what's going to be taking place on this. So on Monday, August 8th, Vice issued a press release announcing that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, so sticking with The Rock, and Danny Garcia of Seven Bucks Production will be the executive producers for a new wrestling series. Per Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, WWE is cooperating with certain people attached to the project because Dwayne is behind it, and he is behind it. One of the keys is that he's able to get people that were not doing Dark Side of the Ring. WWE is cooperating with certain people being on it, which obviously they were not all that cooperative with allowing people to do on Dark Side of the Ring. Because it's Dwayne, they'll be allowed to do it. Tales from the Territory will premiere for Vice TV on October 4th, so we'll be checking that out. Per Vice, the series explores a remarkable era in wrestling history with the ins and outs of the ring with the legends who lived it. Now, we kind of touched on this very early in the show, and we're going to bring it full circle here. Vince McMahon, the problem still lingers in the wake of his retirement. On Tuesday, WWE announced that they have uncovered another $5 million that should have been reported as company expenses. This additional money came in the form of two payments that were made in 2007 and in 2009. This now brings the Vince Hush Fund of inappropriate behavior account up to $19.6 million, almost $20 million in hush money to women that he had inappropriate relations with. Obviously, besides the inappropriate nature of why these funds were used as a company, this puts WWE in a lot of hot water with the SEC because they're a publicly traded company, and this appears to be a creative bookkeeping on WWE's part. So basically trying to hide some things, and when you have investors, that never goes well. In a string of tweets, Kota Ibushi tweets and teases a run in AEW. When asked whether he will go to AEW, Ibushi replies, at least once, with a smile and a wink. In another tweet, Ibushi noted that he is interested in reuniting with Kenny Omega's Golden Lovers tag team, writing, now this is basically pulled from Google Translate, so it's not going to sound exactly crisp and clear, but just read between the lines. I'm going because there are kind of a lot of AEW expectations, maybe 3 times. I can't promise that the card will be set up correctly, but Lovers can, and then he put in parentheses, reunite. When asked about a dream AEW opponent, Ibushi simply replied, Adam Page. Earlier this year, Ibushi went public with several large disagreements with New Japan Pro Wrestling's management, and the feeling is that he is waiting till his contract expires to move on. Currently, he's dealing with an injury, so he's not on TV. But sounds like you may get a Kota Ibushi sighting in AEW. Now, I've got this really long note, and a lot of it is quotes from Ric Flair. I'm not gonna read all of that because it's just too much. But Ric Flair noted some scary episodes from his last match ever. On July 31st, Flair and Andrade El Idolo defeated Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal in a tag team match. Flair recently noted that he was happy with the bout, opening up about the performance and in front of his friends and family for the last time. You can go find the podcast. It was Speaking to Be the Man podcast. Flair noted that during the match, he basically passed out and blacked out twice. And what he highlights is going into this match, he wanted to be right around 220 pounds. So my man worked his ass off, and he ended up going into the match weighing 217. He was completely dehydrated and a little bit emaciated. And because of that, there were 2 different bouts in this match where he completely passes out, and Andrade El Idolo basically had to wake him up and get him kind of going in the right direction. There were parts of the match that he completely forgot, didn't even realize what was going on, and then he would come to, and he'd have to kind of figure it all out and piece it all together. So some scary stuff there. It really kind of sad. Like the fact that Ric Flair is still wrestling at his advanced age, absolutely insane to me. But hopefully this is the last time we have to see Ric Flair wrestle. I don't mind Ric Flair doing things. We just don't need him out there wrestling. It's just not needed, especially when you're passing out in the middle of matches. WWE obviously have made some overtures to this former NXT champ. If you watched Monday Night Raw, you might have picked up on him a little bit. According to Fightful Select, WWE has tasked WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels with contacting Johnny Gargano, and he has reportedly already done so. On this past Monday Night Raw, there were a lot of Johnny G references, from the use of Gargano's submission move to the callback of the do-it-yourself, which Gargano's tag team in NXT was called. So it'll be interesting to see if we get Johnny G showing up anytime on WWE programming. So let's watch out for there. Again, that's another one of Triple H's guys, another guy that Triple H really, really likes. Ty Conti and her new husband, Sammy Guevara, are slated to, they defended their AAA Mixed Tag Team Championship against Dante Martin and Sky Blue on this past week's edition of Rampage. Now, you might have noticed Ty Conti is no longer going by Ty Conti. Instead, she's going by Tay Mello. Now, here is why. There's a bit of a name change. And I thought this was interesting, so I threw it in the notes. I don't really know if anybody's actually going to care, but I thought it was interesting. Conti was actually the surname of Ty's ex-husband. While the duo went public with their divorce in 2021, Ty kept the surname on TV, which she had used in wrestling since 2017. The star's full birth name is Tainara Melo de Carvalho. In WWE, she went by Tayanara Conte. Before joining AEW, she shortened it to Ty Conte in 2020. So Ty Conte was her husband's old her ex-husband's old last name. She switched it back to her maiden name. So just a little heads up there. Now, sounds like AEW stars are a little bit unhappy and maybe wanting to jump back to WWE. In recent weeks, several stars have liked tweets that have criticized their AEW booking, including former WWE stars like Miro and Andrade El Idolo. Both characters at this time are seemingly directionless, and Tony Khan recently did an interview that said he had made some additions to the team, and that should help with the communication, and that should help make things a little bit better. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Miro and Andrade specifically, as well as some of these other WWE stars that have come over to AEW and are either not being utilized or definitely not being utilized to their full potential. It'll be interesting to see. Now, I do have a rumor, and again, I wasn't able to back this up with any other reports. And I do want to get your take on this, John. It sounds like the executives at NBC, they own the USA Network, and they are pushing for an interim champion because Roman Reigns is never on TV. And we have Clash at the Castle coming up. We've got 2 belts that are supposed to be a unified championship. I don't necessarily understand how that works when you have 2 belts. I wish they would just go to 1 already. We just call it the Unified Heavyweight Championship of WWE. That would be great. But we have 2 belts. NBC wants a interim champ of some sort to be on television. What is your take on this? How do you think this works out? Does Roman Reigns end up dropping one of these belts? Because that sounds like what NBC is pushing for, but I don't know if WWE Creative is going to oblige that. Now, usually when NBC or Fox want something, WWE does it because that's where the bread is buttered. But I'm not sure how you go about that. Again, we've got 2 championships that are supposed to be won. I'm not sure what we do here. I feel like this is He-Man and Skeletor, and these are 2 halves of the Power Sword, and I'm not sure what we're doing, and somebody's trying to unlock Grayskull. What do you think happens here?
It's a weird rumor. I know that they want to have, obviously, an influence. I think that they're suggesting it, but I don't think WWE's going to oblige. I don't see them doing that because then you're going to really start doing that. You're going to open up a Pandora's box of television really dictating what you're doing. You don't want to, once you open it, it's going to be hard to put it back. Now, of course, it's important for ratings, and I understand that, having an interim champion that's defending the title is important. But at the same time, I don't think you want to devalue what you got going on with the brand at WWE. So I'm against it totally.
Yeah, I don't like splitting it up. At this point, I just wish they would just have one title. And if Roman's not going to be on TV, like, look, you can have Roman Reigns and you could have The Rock as your main event at WrestleMania 39. We talk about co-main events all the time. Also, we have 2 nights of WrestleMania. You can have that be one of your night's main events. That's fine. You can do that. He doesn't have to be champion for it because the actual storyline going into that should be about who runs the bloodline. Who is the head of the table? Is it The Rock or is it Roman? And that's what the storyline should be. You don't need a belt for that. And in no way, no chance, no how should The Rock be in contention for a championship at this point in his career, right? Like, this guy shows up once a year, does something, and then leaves. There should be no reason that the belt should even be on the line. You should be wrestling for basically bloodline rights of the family, and that's what it should be. So if you want to get that belt off of him, that's fine. Go ahead, get the belt off of him. You don't need him to have the belt. He doesn't have to have it. Don't just make this one belt, make the tag teams one belt, and let's move on already. Let's get going in the direction we need to go. If you want to take it off him, take it off him. You want to put it on Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle, put it on Drew McIntyre. You want to put it on Karrion Kross, Killer Kross, whatever you want to call him, put it on him. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But do not split these up, and do not kowtow to what the TV execs want. Sometimes TV execs don't know what they want, so don't do that. But that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes. That was a long one. I'm sorry. There was just so much stuff going on this week. Thank you for the time to get through all of those, Doc. I do appreciate it.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that we've said, hit us up. Let us know what you thought of this week's broadcast. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Another great week broadcasting. Always enjoy participating and really breaking down all things in the world of professional wrestling. I love it. I enjoy it. These next coming weeks are going to be amazing. And with Peacock, you can go back and stream and really review everything, DVR. So make sure you stay in the loop in professional wrestling. And one of the places you can do that is weekly here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I look forward to next week where we break it all down on the weekend on the latest edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast.